Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this webinar. I am super excited and so honored to be able to share my experience and my knowledge with you about how to use medical marijuana for effective relief. Chances are you might have found me or found this webinar because you may have already had some challenges yourself trying to figure out how to navigate using medical marijuana safely, comfortably, and effectively. So that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So over the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to present to you the top 4 myths that I always hear from patients when I'm working with them, and we'll talk about their truths, and then we'll talk about the key components you need to understand and also include when you're creating your own medical marijuana therapy plan. So let's get started. All right, so let's start with who in the heck am I and why am I even qualified to sit here and talk to you about using medical marijuana. So my name is Tiffany Stewart, and my business is Watch Song Medical Marijuana Education for Healthy Living. First and foremost, I am a patient turned educator and advisor, and I'd love to share with you a little bit about my background and my experience and journey getting off of opiates and using medical marijuana to find relief and revitalization. So I used opiates for about 10 years to manage chronic back pain and pelvic pain. And what I did not realize at the time for those whole 10 years is that my life was very dull and drab. I had a wet blanket over me the whole time. I didn't have passion. I didn't have purpose. Life didn't really feel like living for. And I had no idea that it was the opiates. So about 2 years ago, I got an internal nudge to try to get off of them, and I had no idea how I was going to go about doing that. No Western medicine doctor had ever offered me any other alternative besides opiates. I was basically told that I would need to be on them for the rest of my life, and I believed that. So that's when I turned to CBD oil. And I use CBD oil to wean off of the opiates. I did that quite successfully. And what I realized at the end of weaning off of the opiates was that the CBD oil alone was not enough to manage the chronic back pain and the pelvic pain. So that's when I turned to using THC-based products in order to do that. And that's really where my journey starts. I'm sure as many of you already know, it is not clear and straightforward how to utilize medical marijuana in a safe, effective, comfortable manner. There's no one-stop resource out there to try to find that. So I did a lot of trial and error. I had a lot of really, really uncomfortable experiences trying to figure out for myself how in the heck to use this plant. But I was bound and determined because I didn't have any other options. I was going to do it. I was going to get it figured out. So what I did was I spent about a year fully diving into immersing myself in education around medical marijuana to figure this out. So I did lots of trainings, certifications, personal research, talking to people, scouring the internet, looking at research, looking at studies that have been done. And, I learned how to do that for myself. I learned how to use medical marijuana safely and effectively. Well, around the same time that I was realizing I kind of knew what I was doing with it for myself, I was at a crossroads career-wise, and I needed to make a job change. And what I decided to do was help other people to be able to use medical marijuana safely and comfortably without having to navigate all the difficult experiences that I had to. So what I do today is through my business is I create customized medical marijuana therapy plans or programs for patients, and we'll talk more about what that looks like later on. Um, but basically, I take the need of having to have a patient fully educate themselves from scratch and fully develop a plan. I take all that guesswork out of it, and I do that for patients. I love working with patients. It provides me with a lot of joy, a lot of satisfaction, and I'm so honored to be of service to patients to do that. The other thing that I also do is that I work with industry professionals as well as medical professionals to train them on how they can work with patients more effectively and how to use medical cannabis or medical marijuana. So I have a 4-hour CME accredited certification that I train people on, and I'm also a speaker. All right, so let's see if any of this sounds like you. Um, Opiates are ruining my life. I desperately need pain relief. I'm physically dependent on them, and I can't see a way out. That was certainly my experience, and I know the experience of a lot of other people that are turning to medical marijuana to treat their pain. Um, my depression is so debilitating, I've given up on life. That's a horrible place to be. But again, people are finding relief with medical marijuana. I have low self worth and so much fear from anxiety, it's impossible for me to have meaningful, loving relationships. Again, very, very difficult spot to be in. These people are finding relief with medical marijuana. And then sleep issues. My insomnia makes me miserable. I cannot function in life and work. I'm irritable, aggressive at times, and have no energy or motivation. Um, Again, medical marijuana can and may help you with these things if this sounds anything like you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the webinar itself before we dig into the really good, juicy content. So, who is this webinar for? Well, it's for any medical marijuana patient or a caregiver seeking relief and revitalization through the use of cannabis. Um, if you're really wanting to understand how to use it safely and comfortably, not in a haphazard way, this webinar is for you. And then, most importantly, probably, is that this is really for people that are willing and able to commit to working a cannabis therapy plan or program for a minimum of 60 days. So this is really important. We're going to get into this a lot further into the webinar as far as why 30 days or why 60 days? That sounds like a really long time. But cannabis, and I'm going to use cannabis and medical marijuana interchangeably. Um, Medical marijuana is not a fast acting treatment. You have to be able to commit to it, educate yourself, develop a plan, commit to that plan, and commit the time and energy to seeing it through. And that is not for everybody. So just know that moving in through the rest of the webinar that really it takes a committed person to have an effective cannabis therapy plan. All right, so what are we trying to accomplish in this webinar? Well, I'm going to give you some basic introductory medical marijuana education. And folks, this is really basic. This is really high level. There's so much to teach about. Really, I can only cover the basics. If you're looking for a deeper dive into education, I certainly have classes and certification for that, and you can contact me offline about that. But I'm going to give you the basics to kind of get you started. We're also going to review the top 4 myths about using medical marijuana and what are the truths behind that. And then the other thing that we're going to do is just give you the basic components to medical marijuana therapy planning and basically how to get started on your own. So, real quick, what is this webinar not about? I want to be very clear that there are no quick one solution fits all fix with medical marijuana, and we're going to talk about why that is. But to just be very clear, this might not be the webinar for you if you're looking for a quick fix, a quick solution, because honestly, one does not exist. So this is something that you have to be committed to figuring out what works specifically for you and your needs. There are no cures or guarantees when it comes to anything with medical marijuana. And if anybody ever tells you that it cures things, that this strain always works perfectly for this condition, it's just not going to be true for every person. And you could go through the effort of developing a cannabis therapy plan, and you may not get the results that you're expecting. So there's just no guarantees. The plan is very complicated. Cannabis therapy planning is not straightforward. There's no cures here. There are no guarantees. And if you are looking to this webinar to give you strain names for a particular condition that you are trying to treat, this webinar is not for you. We're going to talk about why strain names you can't use as a predictor of how a particular flower or product is going to affect you. It's just not reliable. It's not going to happen. And we're gonna talk more about that in a little bit. All right, so let's start diving into the good stuff. Okay, so what's the real problem trying to figure out how to medicate with medical marijuana? Well, here's the thing. It's definitely not you. It's not that you can't get it figured out. The plant is super complex and we don't understand it. There are hundreds of chemicals within the cannabis plant that works beneficially in our bodies, particularly speaking about the cannabinoids and the terpenes, and we will get into that. But it's very complex. The plant's very complex. And what's even more complex are our human bodies and how those chemicals from the plant interact with and affect our bodies. And that is why there is no one solution fits all needs therapy plan that you can do here. It's just not possible. It's just not going to happen. Everybody responds differently to medical marijuana, which is basically what we just talked about. Medical marijuana does not act like a pill, and people expect this to happen. So when you take a pill, you are probably expecting a predictable result. You take the pill, you wait a half hour, it works in your system, you feel the effect. Maybe half a day passes and the effect starts to wear off, and then you go take another pill. So repeat. Cannabis does not work that way. Using medical marijuana is about building up the cannabinoids in your body, building up the plant cannabinoids to supplement your body's natural cannabinoids until you feel a therapeutic effect. This takes time to build your cannabinoid levels back up in your system. So you might take cannabis and not feel the therapeutic effect right away, and that is absolutely not surprising. That may not happen. That's why when I work with patients, I put them on a 60-day program because oftentimes it takes that long to really, really feel the therapeutic effects of cannabis. It's just the way that it works. Another issue is social stigma. When we continue to kind of hide that we're using the plant, we don't talk to our doctors about it, we don't talk openly about it, it just kind of keeps things hidden and in the dark. And what becomes problematic then is that there's not open communication about it. There's not flowing information about it. So we get a lack of available education and misguided education. So that's what we're trying to correct. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff. So just a little bit of background education on why medical marijuana can be so effective for so many different conditions. And this is just kind of be the base, give us some basic background that's going to help make other parts of the webinar make more sense. Okay. So it is all about our endocannabinoid system. All right. So all of us have an endocannabinoid system. Its primary purpose in our bodies is to bring about homeostasis through all kinds of regulation, metabolism, temperature, pH, hormones. The list really, really goes on and on. Just know that it's basically found throughout your entire body and the cells in your body. Okay, so what is the endocannabinoid system doing? What is it really made up of? Well, it's made up of neurons, receptor sites, and something called endocannabinoids. Okay, and so our body is naturally producing endocannabinoids, and the two most common ones that we know about today that are in research, it's called anandamide and 2-AG. And what research is showing more of is that ailments and health conditions can be linked to our bodies not having enough of our own endocannabinoids. And this is called a cannabinoid deficiency. So this is where medical marijuana steps in and can help us. The cannabinoids from the plant, and they're called phytocannabinoids. And when I say cannabinoids, I'm talking about things like THC, CBD. Those are the two most common, but there's also lots of other cannabinoids that we are still learning about. A couple of them are like CBC, CBG, CBN. So basically, those plant cannabinoids, they act on the same receptor sites in our bodies as our own cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids in the plant help to supplement and replenish our endocannabinoid system, which then in turn leads to many of the health benefits and effective treatment for so many conditions. Okay, so let's start to get into the myths. So the first myth that I always hear people believing is that in order to use medical marijuana, I have to feel high or feel the psychoactive effect or feel paranoia in order to experience its therapeutic effect. And that's absolutely not true. So again, here are the cannabinoids and the terpenes that are responsible for the effect that you feel from medical marijuana. Now, we talked a little bit about the cannabinoids. Terpenes are what give cannabis its smell. And these are also what's found in essential oils. So these are the smells like lemon, pine, spices, flowers, citrusy smells. Those are all coming from the terpenes, and those terpenes absolutely have a therapeutic effect in your body. So if you understand how the cannabinoids and the terpenes affect you, you are able to gauge and adjust that psychoactive feeling that you may get from medical marijuana. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So I mentioned that we know about THC and CBD. And a lot of, most of what we know about the cannabinoids is what we know about THC. That's been around for years. We've known that for years. That's the one that we know the most about. The second one that we know the most about is definitely CBD. In recent years, there's been a lot more research that has come out about CBD. We know that THC gives us the psychoactive effect. What we also know is that CBD has a much different effect in the body, and it's considered to be non-psychoactive. And I'm not saying that there isn't a minor mental shift in how you might feel, but it's not like the psychoactive effect you feel from THC. It's more calming and a more uplifting effect. Okay. What we know is that THC activates the CB1 receptor site in the endocannabinoid system. And because THC is activating or stimulating this site, we feel the psychoactive effect because of that stimulation. On the other hand, CBD does not activate or work at those receptor sites the same way. In fact, they don't activate those receptor sites at all. So you don't feel a psychoactive effect when you take CBD. Additionally, CBD inhibits the action of THC working on the receptor site. So what in the world does all this mean for how you can use medical marijuana and not have to feel as much as a psychoactive effect or feel paranoia? Well, when you take CBD and THC together, that CBD mitigates or lessens the psychoactive effect that you feel from the THC. Now, how much CBD does that mean that you take versus THC? Now, that ratio is really going to depend on you. It depends on the person. Some people use a 1-to-1 ratio. Some people use 5-to-1, 5 times as much CBD as they use THC, and some even more. It really just depends, but the important thing here to know is that many patients find therapeutic relief using CBD with THC without having to use an all THC-based product. So whether or not a CBD-THC ratio product is an ideal therapy really varies person to person and condition to condition. You may have a condition where you need more THC than CBD. Patients that have severe pain, cancer, HIV, hepatitis, they tend to need more THC than CBD to treat their conditions effectively. So a high CBD ratio may not be a solution for them. But it's a really, really great place to start to see if that might work for you, especially if you're concerned about these psychoactive effects and paranoia effects. This is really great place to start for people who know that they need a specific daytime regimen. So, for example, you're at work, you know that you need to remain focused and clear-headed and alert, and in a high THC product isn't going to serve you well in that manner. Using CBD in addition to your THC is a great way to still have effective therapy during the day without the possible high or psychoactive THC effect. We talked about that, and so let's speak specifically to paranoia. So not only will CBD help mitigate the effect of paranoia, but if often sativa type dominant strains can make people more prone to feel paranoia because it has more of a mentally stimulating effect. So if you're prone to paranoia or know that you do experience paranoia from sativa leaning strains, try an indica dominant strain. Indica dominant strains are known to produce more of a body relaxation or body sedation effect. And oftentimes it won't give you the paranoia. All right, so let's look at myth number 2, which is all medical marijuana is basically the same, so I would just try any product and see what happens. Um, this strategy can absolutely work for you. It does not work for many, many people, and this is why. So, depending on your cannabis use history, the desired experience that you want to have. So, in that example that I gave with needing to stay clear-headed and focused so you can work, that's a particular desired experience that you want to make sure that your cannabis products can support. You've got to factor in your health goals and your conditions you're trying to treat. You need to know what products are going to have what kind of effect on you. Tinctures, vapes, concentrates, topicals. Then your consumption method. And what I mean by consumption method is whether you want to inhale it, if you want to use it sublingually, if you want to ingest it. All these different things to consider are going to impact your product selection. Okay, so I'm going to say this again, and I'll probably continue to say it several more times throughout this webinar. Medical marijuana is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The plant's very complex. We talked about there being hundreds of different chemicals. Every marijuana product has a different cannabinoid and terpene profile that produces different therapeutic effects. So you're going to want to know, in general, what's expected, the expected effects of those cannabinoids and terpenes contained in those products you're buying, so you will know if the product is likely to help you with your specific goals or conditions. Okay, consumption methods. Not all consumption methods may be ideal for all users. So I mentioned before that the different consumption methods are, some of them, inhalation, sublingual, edible, topical. Well, each of these different consumption methods will have a differing effect on your system. The onset of effect, so how long until you feel the effect taking place. The duration of effect, how long the effect actually lasts, and its potency. So for instance, if you are using an inhalation method, that is very quick acting. Within a couple of minutes, you feel that effect. It's also going to move through your system probably the quickest. It may only last for an hour or two. But if you look at something like an edible, and I'm not talking about something that you might suck in your mouth like a candy, I'm talking about actually ingesting it through your digestive tract whole, that has a much different effect. Edibles, when you take edibles, the onset of effect may take up to a couple of hours, and it may last up to 6 to 8 hours. So, that is all very important to know, because layering consumption methods is a very important part of a cannabis therapy plan. But it may not be for everyone. So I hear this time after time after time. Everybody's got a good edible story. Well, because of what we just talked about with the effect lasting longer, and it not taking as long to, or taking longer to take effect, people get in trouble with edibles all the time. So a beginner may take an edible, and that can be a bad idea if you take too much. So what happens is, because the onset takes long for it to take effect, somebody gets impatient looking at that cookie, and they eat more. And what they realize is it just didn't take effect yet. Well, here's the other issue with that. THC, when ingested through the digestive tract, turns into a more potent metabolite called 11-hydroxy-THC. So not only to the beginner taking the edible that they didn't need to take anymore, but they took more because they were impatient, that THC is converting into a more potent form in their body. And that's why people get in trouble with edibles. So you've got to know your consumption methods and how they're going to affect you, so you can make those product purchases be aligned with what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so in my observation in working with patients, this just see what happens approach rarely works for patients that are seeking a very specific experience or needing a very specific effect to treat a condition. That kind of haphazard approach, typically people are not going to target the cannabinoids they need, the terpenes they need, the consumption method layering effects they need, nor understand that they need to dose up to treat certain conditions. And if you're not paying attention to your dose or not being consistent with that and not knowing that you need to work up in your dose to treat a certain condition, the just wait and see process is just it's just not going to work for you. And the one thing that kind of saddens me a little bit about this is that when patients use this approach and then they don't get their expectation met with using medical marijuana, the patient thinks that medical marijuana is not for them, and then they abandon the therapy. So in order to have a more predictable, safe, comfortable, effective experience with medical marijuana, bottom line is it takes educating yourself, planning, commitment, and time. And you can absolutely do all of this on your own. But the bottom line is, before you step foot into a dispensary, know your goals, do your research, educate yourself, and know why you want to use certain cannabinoids, terpenes, products, consumption methods over others when you go to buy your products. All right, so myth number 3. Since dispensaries and my doctor are medical marijuana experts, I will rely on them to tell me what I need. Okay, and I want to be 100% clear here that I am not criticizing industry professionals or medical professionals. I work with a ton of them. I love them. I train a bunch of them, and they're wonderful. So what I'm about to talk about has nothing to do with me being critical. The truth is that the scope of their professions usually do not involve in-depth, longer-term patient advisement or the more thorough clinical applications of medical marijuana. And because there is no one-size-fits-all solution for medical marijuana, the depth of knowledge and education required to step a patient through a 60-day plan, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, tracking symptoms, understanding product effectiveness, making adjustments, layering consumption methods, crafting safe dosing schedules. It just flat out isn't usually within their educational scope or job description to do these things. Okay, so another thing to watch out for, I think, within the dispensaries, if you're relying just on them for your education. I told you we would talk about strain names. So people come to me all the time and they want to know, what strain should I use to treat my migraines? What strain's the best one for my back pain? And I am never going to give you a strain name. It's just not ever going to happen, because the strain name does not ever imply the effectiveness for a condition due to the nature of of changing of plant genetics. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So I'll use the analogy. If you have two parents that have offspring that are not identical twins, you might have one that has blue eyes, another that has brown eyes, one who has a demeanor that's very mild mannered, the other one's a little bit wild. This is exactly how marijuana genetics work as well. So the same Blue Dream strain that you buy in a week or buy from a different dispensary is not going to be the same Blue Dream you buy today. And that's because the characteristics of the plant change when it gets propagated. It's just the nature of the plant. That's just how genetics work. What is critical to know is the cannabinoid and terpene profile. Okay. And that's what can change harvest to harvest, plant to plant. But so if you go into a dispensary knowing I'm looking for this particular cannabinoid profile and this particular terpene profile, it doesn't matter if the strain name. You can just go into the dispensary and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and it won't matter if they're out of that other strain. It is just a better way to approach you buying your products, because it's just the truth of how the plant works and what's important. The strain name does not matter. It's the cannabinoids and the terpenes when you're looking at specific strains. Okay. So what's the other problem with strain names or product claims? So no one should ever do something like this. So whether it's a doctor, a dispensary, a friend, me, no one should ever make claims that a specific strain or product will heal, will cure, or even treat a specific condition. By just going off the strain name, you don't know with any degree of certainty what that predictable effect is going to be. Okay? Not only is this because the plant's genetics change, but because of the complexity of the cannabinoid and terpene profiles interacting with your specific body's needs and endocannabinoid system. The cannabinoids, it takes them building up in your fat cells, and then they slowly, and they also get released slowly and used. This is why people will give up on medical marijuana therapy as after trying it one time. It takes a lot longer than that to figure out if it's going to work with you. So what happens is, Joe, a dispensary worker, says, "Hey, yeah, use this strain to use OG Kush to get rid of your migraines. It works great for that." So what happens is, if that flower, that strain did not work great for that person thinks, "Oh, this product should have worked because my medical marijuana expert told me at the dispensary that it should, and it didn't, so medical marijuana isn't for me." And that's just not true most of the time, almost all the time. So almost all my clients I work with find therapeutic results that they're looking for when I put them on a very targeted, safe, and effective 30 to 60 day cannabis or medical marijuana therapy program, absolutely without relying on the strain name. So again, the bottom line is what matters is you knowing what cannabinoids, terpenes, consumption methods, dose, and your body, the effect in your body, that's what's important. That's for you to figure out how it affects you in your body. If you're relying on a dispensary or a doctor for your medical marijuana therapy planning and you're not getting the results you want, you have to take your education and planning into your own hands. That's either by educating yourself and developing your own plan, or working with someone like me or somebody else that can develop that plan for you. Okay, myth number 4. The higher the THC dose, or that could also be referred to as concentration or THC potency, the more therapeutic benefit I will receive. Okay, so let's talk about what too high of THC doses actually will do. And then we'll talk about the truth rather than the myth. If you take too high of a dose too fast of THC, you're going to have a really uncomfortable experience. Now, your condition may mean that you need to have higher dose regiment, but you don't start off taking that higher dose. You have to work up, and as you work up, your tolerance will build up to the psychoactive effect, and you'll be able to take more THC without feeling as much as that a psychoactive effect. The other thing that taking a too high of a dose can do, it can flat out be unsafe due to contraindications between certain conditions and medications. So a common train of thought is, oh, it's a plant, it's all natural, it's completely safe, or I can't die from it, so it's safe. But here's the truth, especially for medications. There's an interaction. Medical marijuana has an interaction in your body with a family of enzymes called PY450, and they're responsible for metabolizing or breaking down many, many, many medications that are out there and available today. So when you take marijuana with these medications, it could cause the medications to be more or less effective. Well, that obviously can be a big problem. So this is why it's really, really important to consult your health professional team, your doctor, your pharmacist about potential conditions and medical interactions before using medical marijuana. And if you feel like you cannot talk to your doctor about this topic, go find a doctor that you can. Not all doctors will. But there certainly are doctors out there that will and will be happy to help you with that. Okay, so what can you do to help understand how I achieve a therapeutic benefit? If it's not taking super high doses of THC right off the bat, well, how do I get there? How do I figure that out? Well, one, you've got to start with a low dose. And what do I mean by low dose? And I'm just talking about THC here because this seems to be the most problematic cannabinoid when trying to figure out how to dose. I mean, pretty darn low, between 2.5 and 5 milligrams. And what you're trying to do then is slowly increase your dose up until you're achieving the therapeutic results that you're looking for. It's really as simple as that. What I find, though, is that people won't do that, or people don't do that. They're not consistent in taking each and every single dose, and people that I work with tend to do best when they have a cannabinoid level built up in their system consistently all day. So that's why I have to take it 4 times per day and take it every day. I can't tell you how many patients I work with time after time who come to me that say, I've tried medical marijuana. It doesn't seem to work for me. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about what you've tried. Talk to me about your dosing. Talk to me about how much you used it. How many milligrams of THC were you using and other cannabinoids? And the response I'll get so often is, well, I was only remembering to take it every 3 or 4 days. Well, that is a huge problem when you're trying to use medical marijuana for the issue that we talked about earlier, where medical marijuana is not like a pill. It doesn't have this fast acting effect. You've got to build up the plant cannabinoids in your system over a period of time. And if you're only taking it intermittently, I will guarantee you are not going to find the therapeutic effect that you're looking for. So you've got to be consistent in your dosing. And then this is the other thing that people don't realize is that because it takes a long time to build up in your system, and everybody is different. Some people, they might feel an effect in a week or 2 weeks. I see more commonly for the conditions that I'm working with people that they have, it's normally between 30 days and 60 days. So I tell people to try it out for a minimum of 60 days, but also expect that you're going to have to make adjustments. It just goes with this type of planning because you don't have a prediction of exactly how it's going to affect you. So you have to expect to make dosage adjustments along the way. Okay, so let's bottom line this for you. Humans and medical marijuana evolved together. We can see that in that they use the same exact receptor sites in the endocannabinoid system to provide benefit. So the plant cannabinoids supplement our endocannabinoid system, and this is why medical marijuana works. We talked about using CBD in conjunction with THC to mitigate the psychoactive effects. All medical marijuana is not the same. You've got to educate yourself on what you may need. Know your cannabinoids, terpenes, layering consumption methods. Use going low and slow 60-day dosing schedule. Again, no one-size-fits-all solution here. You need to find out what works for you. Again, in order to understand what product purchases you're going to make, the things that you need to understand before that in developing your plan is, what's your cannabis use history? Are you a beginner or not? What desired experience do you want to have? What are your health goals and what conditions do you have? Know all that. Be clear on that before developing your plan. If you want predictable, safe, comfortable, effective results, every patient needs to have a customized plan. I have never seen it work any other way. You need a solution that is very specific to your needs and your goals, so it needs to be customized. Effective medical marijuana therapy includes education, planning, commitment, and time. I have not found a way around this. Okay, so how can I help? So I've set aside time in the next 48 hours to talk to you specifically about how you can apply these concepts. So if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask me, I'd love to talk to you to see if I can help you. Whatever challenge you're having, I've likely seen it, and I know that I can help you overcome it. So what we'll do, we'll get on the phone for about 30 minutes and just have a strategy session about how you can develop your medical marijuana therapy plan. And the cost for this is absolutely free. No charge. I just really want to be able to help you. So let's talk about who the call is for, okay? I'm serious about the people that I work with. I want to work with people that are serious about stepping up and being committed to their medical marijuana therapy planning. So you've got to be serious and committed about developing a medical marijuana therapy plan. That has to happen. You must be committed to trying your medical marijuana therapy plan for 60 days. If you feel like you can't commit to that, I don't know that I can help you, because any kind of advice or suggestions or feedback that I will give you is going to be about trying this for at least a 60-day term. You must have the means and the budget to either grow or purchase your medical marijuana products. What I mean by means is you've got transportation to go get it. You've got the budget set aside to buy those products. People often think that medical marijuana is a plant, so it's inexpensive. Depending on where you live, that may or may not be true. So you've got to be able to grow it, or just flat out be able to purchase the products that you develop the plan for. Here's another really, really critical part. You must be willing to journal for symptom management. So during this 60 days, you've got to be willing at least one time per week to jot down and understand, okay, what was my beginning dose? What was my ending dose? What's my pain level, my activity level, my sleep quality? What negative side effects am I having? So the reason why that is so critical is because if you need to make adjustments and you don't know what you did before, there is no way that you're going to know what to adjust going forward in any kind of effective way. So you've got to be willing to journal for this time period in order to help you help yourself. And you've got to be okay with trial and error and adjustments. You've got to be okay with uncertainty and unpredictability. As much as a cannabis therapy plan gives you this roadmap to try to be as clear as possible, I've talked about it at length during this webinar. You just don't know how that product is going to affect you. So you have to be able to expect the unexpected and make adjustments along the way. So if this sounds like this is you, please book a session with me. So why am I doing this? I get it. I understand your challenges and I want to help you. I really want to be of service. I get fulfillment and joy from helping other people have a streamlined path through medical marijuana therapy. So I like to be able to give them that education to be able to do that. You deserve relief and revitalization in your life. I want to see you have that. There may be some of you that may want my help for transforming your life. I mentioned earlier that I actually have the educational component and the planning component to create an effective cannabis therapy plan or program for you for 60 days. And that might be something that you're interested in. And if so, on that call, we can discuss if it's a good fit for both of us or not. And if it's not, that's fine too. There's no obligation. Again, the call is completely free. So spaces are limited. Please sign up now. So you'll see a link, and what you do is you'll click on that, and you'll find an available time slot and fill out a short form, and we will go ahead and talk at that designated time. I want to thank you so much for being here, for stepping up, for finding cannabis and medical marijuana education. You can do this. This is such a viable treatment for so many people. Sometimes you just need a little bit of guidance and assistance to get there. So I applaud you. Thank you for showing up for this webinar. And if there's anything I can do to help you, please sign up for a call. And I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.